All right, here's my tips on how to lose weight. All right, so what we're going to do first is we are going to track our food. So in a video before I talked about tracking our food. So we want to find out how much we're eating and how much of a deficit we need to be in to actually lose weight. So say for example, you can jump onto MyFitnessPal to figure out roughly what you should be eating and your macro breakdown. So my tip number one would be to actually track your food and to see where you're going from there. My biggest tip is in a weight loss thing is to actually, some people go against this, but I actually believe in this, is to weigh yourself weekly. All right, so something I like to do with a lot of people I help is to actually weigh themselves weekly. So say for example, if they're going to weigh themselves every Sunday, to make sure their weight is actually coming down, or if it's staying the same, we need to know why. All right, so say for example, if they're losing 5 kilos in a week, for me that'd probably be maybe on the higher end, and we should look at either upping their calories to make sure it's not coming down too fast, because we don't want to be burning into muscle, right? We want to make sure it's a gradual grind and not something that happens too quickly, all right? So we don't want to burn off muscle at the end of the day, because muscle is the biggest thing that burns body fat. So that would be my next biggest tip, is to make sure you weigh yourself weekly. If you're not sure how to go about this, feel free to reach out, I can help you. And my last tip would be to make sure, actually I have heaps. So one of the biggest ones, other biggest ones is making sure protein is key. So protein should be the first thing on your plate that you make sure you eat enough of, and making sure you get somewhere between 1.6 to 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight is probably the best way to go to start with. And then the last thing I'd probably say is to make sure lifting weights. So make sure you lift weights. Lift nice and heavy. We want to make sure we build the muscle mass, or at least maintain it during a fat loss phase, all right? Because if you're not maintaining the muscle mass, when you go back to eating normally, you're probably just going to get chunky again, all right? So we want to make sure we actually lift heavy and build a good muscle mass base, all right? So there's some of my key tips. Hope you enjoyed. Stay tuned for some more.